Okay, let's move on to some of the other elements that we have in 3D Studio. I'm just going to hide this toolbar here. There we go. Right then, at the bottom of the screen you can see the timeline. You can see you've got the timeline scrubber here. You can move that up and down to actually move backwards and forwards in time. On there you can see it tells you what the current range is. You can see you've got 0 of 100, so showing that you've got 0 to 100 frames there. You can see this little blue bar here, that indicates exactly what frame you're on currently in time. And here you've got a little button that opens up the mini curve editor. So this is another way of getting to the curve editor, for when you're using that for animation. And whatever object you've got selected, you can see it's opened up the transformation animation area for that particular object. So useful if you want to quickly tweak something, but generally it's a better idea to use the full animation curve editor. So we'll just close that down again. Over to the right, when you're working with animation, you have the various animation options. For instance, you have set keys here, alter key here, key filters, and you can work with various elements there. Then you have the time shuttling options, play. If we just click on that, you can see it's playing. If we open this menu up, you can see you've got different options here for working with different time systems, NTSC, which is a 30 frames a second time system, or you can work with PAL, which is the British TV system, which works at 25 frames a second, or you can work with film, 24 frames a second there, or custom. You can set up any frame rate that you want to there. You can set up the beginning frame of your range here, the end time, the length of the animation and so forth. So you can do lots of little time tweaks and setup options there. You've got the play button here. Move forward 1 frame, move backwards 1 frame, go to the end of the animation, go to the beginning of the animation. So all your different options there for moving backwards and forwards in time and work with animations. And here you can see it shows the current frame that you're on at the moment. So you've got various options there for working with animation. Let's have a quick look at the curve editor here. I'll just bring that up here. As you can see, it's a larger version of the mini curve editor, which is pretty obvious. I'll just move this down here. I'll create a quick animation here, so you can see briefly what it's used for. It's obviously used for editing animation, but let's just show how that works. I'll turn on auto key, and I'm just going to make this teapot move through time. So I'm going to go to the end of our range here, and I'm going to make it move over here. And you can see immediately you've got these curves which have appeared in the curve editor to show how that teapot is moving in the 3 different axes. I'm going to go to the middle of the animation range, and I'm just going to give it a movement here. And again, you can see the curves are updating in the curve editor, and you can see how that's working there. So we'll just drop that there. And now you can go into the curve editor. You can scrub time in here. Another way of working, with the time scrubbing feature, you can just grab that bar, move that back and forth, and you can see as I'm doing that, the teapot's animating along its animation. And you can see in different parts of the curve we have a key at the beginning on the y-axis here, we have a key in the middle, and we have a key at the end. And you can just grab that key and you can just move that around. You can actually just change the animation by doing that. And it's easy to see that if we move the time slider to that particular frame and we move that, there we go, move that there. You can see the teapot moves in the viewport to correspond with the position that we're actually setting here in the curve editor. So, you have a lot of options there in the curve editor for working with animation. All these tools, and that's obviously something which we'll be coming to in the specialist DVD for 3D Studio Max, so we'll just leave that for now. There are 2 modes to the curve editor. We have the curve editor and the dope sheet. And the dope sheet basically represents your animation with these little squares here, and it's a much more sort of symbolic way of looking at scenes, working with blocks of animation, moving them around in time, scaling them, and so forth. So the dope editor is a different way of working with animation, but it's also very useful. You don't always want to have to work with curves, and curves can get very messy. So the dope sheet is very useful in its own respect. Okay, so there we go. There we have the curve editor and the dope sheet. Okay, next we have a look at the material editor. Let's just bring that up here. And the material editor is obviously used for editing and working with materials in Max. It's a multifunctional system, and it'll work with basically any rendering system that you have in Max, you know, Mental Ray, Brazil, whatever. It has a total of 24 render balls that you can actually see here, and each of these gives you a little preview of the material in question. If you grab the little bars in between the render balls and just drag around, you can use, it's the leftmost button that actually does that rather than middle. You can see you can pan around the full 24 balls. And another thing you can do, you can actually you know, customize the view so you have more balls visible at once. You can see here I've got 3x2, but I could do the full 6x4, and then you can see all your render balls at once. It just depends on how much detail you want to see on oops, just close that down there, on your textures at any one time. I personally nearly always use 2x3. That's my preferred method for working. As an example, we'll just bring up the material map browser here, and we'll just replace that blend material with a standard material. There we go. Just close that down again. And here you can change lots of different options with materials. We will just change the diffuse color of this here. We'll make it a little bit more shiny. There we go. We'll go to maps, go down to bump mapping. We'll create a new, let's create a new noise map there. You can see you've got bump mapping on here now. And we'll just change the parameters on this until it makes an interesting bump map. There we go, that's pretty cool. We'll make it self-luminous by using a marble map there. Okay, there we go, and we'll just use color on that. So now we've got a self-luminous effect on it. Maybe, you know, we don't really like that, so you can just turn that off here. So, you know, it's quite a dense little GUI in this element of Max, the material editor. There's a lot of functionality packed into it, and as I said, it's pretty much something that we'll go into detail in a specific DVD. But there you go, that's the material editor. Right, let's have a quick look at particle flow. To bring up the particle flow dialog, you can just press 6 on your keyboard, and there it comes. We'll just expand this out a little bit until it gives us a little bit more room. The dialog for particle flow up is made of 4 parts. We have the schematic view here. We have the operator menu here, description window here, and over here we have the control panel for any operators that you currently have selected. If you click on any of the operators, you can see it brings up a description over here, so you can see what each one of these is. And you know, for a much more in-depth description of that, you should look in the user help file. Or for instance, you can have a look at our specialist DVD on particle flow, or rather I should say our particle specialist series on particle flow, and we'll go into all this sort of stuff in much more detail there. So let's just create a standard flow. Just drag this in here. You can see it's just a drag and drop system, and you can move the different events around a particle flow. It's a very nice interface to work with particles. It's a schematic system, so you know, particles are this source element here just creates the particles. Then they're birthed here, and then various operators act upon the particles to give you whatever it is that you're looking for in that particular effect. Let's say we wanted to have some sort of age test on particles. You know, if particles are older than 10 frames long, then we want them to do something. We'll just drag an age test operator here, and you can see it's producing this little line here, which means we can just drop it into this event. So I'm going to put it towards the end of the event here. There we go. And we went then, when the particles are older than 10, let's say we want them to move to another event, and we'll change their speed. So we just grab a speed operator here, and we'll just wire that up. There we go. So there you can see why particle flow gets its name. As you can see, particles flow from one event to another, and by doing so you can completely control exactly what those particles are doing. When they collide with a surface, you can have them pass to another event. When they get to a certain age, you can have them do something. If you're using scripting, for instance, you can do a scripted operator, and that could test for anything. You know, proximity to an object, anything you like, really. It's a very, very flexible system, so definitely something worth looking at there. Okay, let's have a quick look at the quad box, which is this menuing system that you bring up by using the right mouse button. You can see it's called the quad box because it generally has 4 windows. You know, it could just have 1 or just 2. It's really up to you.